365 Sports, our good friend Dennis Dodd, CBS Sports. And Dennis, you got a chance to talk with FSU AD Michael Alford over the weekend as FSU made its way to the College World Series. And obviously they're the most, I guess, intriguing story in college athletics right now as an individual entity, as they are on their way out of the ACC eventually. He seems, I wouldn't say cavalier, but very confident about talking about the future. What kind of struck you about the way he's approached this to realignment compared to everybody else who's done this kind of under the cover of night?
I think you're right. Paul, I think you're right. The way he, not cocky, but confident. I think that's just the way he is. He used to work at USC. He's got loads of experience. He, when I had met with him, it was at the regional, and he had just come back from Carlsbad, California, with a golf team that's been, I think, second nationally. We now know Florida State's going to the College World Series. They were just ACC champions. So he kept stressing the brand. And that's what this is about. Florida State thinks it's better than the ACC. And maybe they are. But, you know, the industry doesn't think so. They are worth about what Big 12 teams are worth, about what ACC teams are worth in terms of media rights revenue, which is about $41 million per year. Now, if offered to the Big Ten or SEC, would you take that and maybe get a full share in 10 years? You absolutely would. And that's where they think they're at right now.
And look, Dennis, full disclosure, I'm a Florida State alum, and I agree with your assessment. Like, had they not had, 6-7 years of really bad football, like maybe they'd have a little bit of a better argument. But and look, Clemson really kind of has this same argument that they do, maybe a little bit more because recently they've been better.
Yeah.
But again, the conference and Florida State and Clemson as a whole did not do the best job of, when they looked across and watched the SEC doing what they were doing, matching that at all. And so they kind of are where they are. I agree that maybe they're worth more money than the other teams in the ACC, but that's not the agreement that they're in. And that's why this makes it so complicated.
It's complicated, but I tend to cut to the chase on this. I mean, you said it, they look like they're leaving at some point. What the timeline is, I can't tell you. But I think it's just a matter of negotiations now. What's the number? They had this giant televised board of trustees meeting last year, if you remember. Mm-hmm. And their bean counters came up with $572 million as a figure that would get them out of the ACC. Well, that was a little bit of home cooking because that plays into their assessment that the ACC contract is way out of line. And so if they start at 572, it ain't going to be 572. It's going to be somewhere in the middle. What that number is, I don't know. But I think the next date to watch for Florida State is August 15th. That's when any team that intends to leave the ACC has to notify the league a year's notice on August 15th. I think they will let that date pass, because I think if and when they leave the ACC and it is a negotiation, then that will be negotiated, if you know what I mean. Like when they leave, will be negotiated, whether it's 9 months or 15 months. That'll be in the package. So I don't think August 15th is necessarily a line in the sand right now.
And look, Clemson has the same plan. They're not as vocal as Florida State, and Florida State is doing kind of all that work for them, which might be one of the smarter plans in realignment that we've seen. Is like, look, we'll file everything and we'll do all this thing on our end, but when it comes to the talking, we'll let Tallahassee do that. Yeah,
it's two different lawsuits for two different reasons. Well, no, the reasons are the same. They want to get out, but it's two different lawsuits. Clemson and Florida State have sued the ACC. The ACC has sued them. Now they're going through venue battles. Will it be in Leon County next to the state capitol in Tallahassee? Will it be in North Carolina where the ACC is located? So like that kind of stuff. We're really preliminary type stuff. But, and I forgot to ask Michael Alford about this. They've got a not so secret document that the Tampa Bay Tribune was able to unearth that really shows how long they've been working on this, what kind of people they have involved, what they want to do. And it's called Project Osceola. It sounds a little secret, doesn't it? Started in, if anybody's got a subscription to the Tampa Tribune, it's out there. It started in September of 2022, and it includes projections on private equity, licensing rights, naming rights for Doak Campbell. There's not a lot of college stadiums that I can think off the top of my head that are Toyota Stadium at Doak Campbell Field. You know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. That's what they're going to do. That's going to be a lot of money for them. Then you add on the house settlement stuff, which affects everybody. They've got some big plans, ambitious plans.
Yeah, the only one I can think of is Jones AT&T in Lubbock. Like when the story broke last week, that's the only one I could think of at all that has that kind of deal. And I'm not even sure how much tech really gets from AT&T on that one compared to what the deals are going to be like now that everybody's kind of allowed to put logos on the field and whatnot, which I'm sure Florida State and Clemson in the next couple years will have 70 if they could, because they need to close that gap. But do you get the sense that it is not worth the Big Ten and SEC's time right now, even if they've met with Michael Alford or anybody at Clemson, to even discuss it, because they have no idea when this would be? Like, it could be 2 years from now. It could be 4 years from now. It's going to happen eventually, because that's what Florida State and Clemson want. But, and they don't want to be there, but who knows when it is? And what would Greg Sankey or Tony Petitti even have to say about it? Because they'd be like, yeah, we'd love them. It's 6 years from now. There's a lot of things that have to happen. I have, I guess, anecdotal evidence that the other power force commissioners have been warned, don't tamper with Florida State or any of our schools, which makes sense. It's torturous interference. That really lands you in court pretty quick if you're talking to them now. And again, you don't have to. The Big Ten played with 18 for the first time. The SEC was 16. They want to see how that goes. I suspect now, have they vetted this behind closed doors? Absolutely, they have. But what I suspect is, what I know is Florida State legally would have to extricate itself. And only at that time, because it is so sensitive for all parties, then, do those schools maybe get involved. But right now, as I told you guys, they're not worth the pro rata. They're not worth the approximately $60 million that the SEC is going to take in with their new media rights deal per school, and the 75 seem to be $100 million that the Big Ten's going to have. So what do you do with that? Oregon and Washington came into the Big Ten for half share. Well, you had to. It was a dying conference, and that's a generational decision to go to the Big Ten. You are set for life. The Big Ten, we'll wait 10 years for a full share, no problem. We'll figure it out. That's what would happen to Florida State. I would, I'm curious, and I'm not sure he would answer this, or anybody would, because it just sounds bad. But for Florida State and Clemson, and probably North Carolina in all this, even though they're much more divided, if you ask them, is this about South Carolina or Florida or any of the schools that are in the SEC, that's not really the big thing about them making the money. I do think ego-wise, it's more about the fact that Rutgers and Vanderbilt and Indiana and Purdue make more money than Florida State and Clemson and North Carolina. Yeah,
that's right. They're valued more than Florida State. And that's a separate discussion, because I think with the Super League, you guys remember that a few months ago?
Yeah.
I think what you saw there, my takeaway was, okay, 80 teams, who gets cut? And my message that I got was, if and when that happens, Alabama's going to wake up someday and go, why is Vanderbilt making the same money as us? Well, that's Florida State.
Yeah.
Why is Vanderbilt? And Michigan goes, why is Purdue making the same as us? And so those kind of things are going to happen. So, yeah, they've got to do that. I will tell you, you brought up North Carolina. That's a great point. I think they want the same thing. They want out. But I think them being quiet They can do it because they can. Okay, let's say Florida State and or Clemson get out. So that's not the same conference they signed up for. So without going to court, they just pull out the contract and go, you know what? We're out of here. This isn't the league that we signed up for. We're going elsewhere. And I will tell you, they are after Florida State probably, North Carolina is the most valuable piece out there. And I'm not talking about Notre Dame. Notre Dame's not going anywhere right now, but North Carolina is highly valued because of the brand, because of the Jumpman brand, because of Nike, because of basketball. And people don't realize that. They're going to be in this, I think, as well.
Finally, and thanks for your time this morning, Dennis. Really appreciate it. What do the schools like? Is there anything outside of their, long contract that the other schools can really do to improve their situation, especially given the fact that ESPN has this look in? What is it, next year or the year after?
February. Yeah.
In February, yeah, next year in February to kind of slow the roll.
Yeah. Well, there's nothing you can do about it. That was negotiated in, how far are we into this, 8 years ago. And all it says is they can have a look into the contract in February, decide to have a look into the contract in February of 25 to adjust things in 26. The league's not going anywhere, but it was pretty smart. Somebody at ESPN said, wow, there's membership changes, there's realignment. Let's take a look at what we paid for it. You've got not only that, you've got two look-ins in the new CFP contract. One accounts for, I think the word is substantive or substantial realignment. I would dare say that Florida State moving would be substantial realignment. There's a look-in for that. Ill-defined, but there's another one in 27 to look at the payout and membership, and that's an ESPN thing too.
Oh, before I forget, did he talk any about private capital, private equity?
Yeah.
Is he okay with that, or is that? I mean, there's divided views on what that really means. If you ask Drew Weatherford, he's like, no, it's really just an investment, and it's not Red Lobster. But I mean, that's what all private equity firms would say, isn't it?
Yeah. Yeah, he did talk about that. They're all in on this. They've got. You mentioned Drew Weatherford. Drew Weatherford's a former quarterback who is the founder and CEO of something called Weatherford Capital, private equity firm in Tampa. He's also a trustee at Florida State. He's all in on this, exit thing. They're engaged with JP Morgan Chase. I want to say they're involved with Redbird Capital, which is a huge one.
They are, yeah.
But you're right. There are divided opinions on what this stuff does. Basically, private equity buys revenue streams. So they're betting on Florida State's value to go up in some way. Now, if it goes to the Big Ten or SEC, it absolutely goes up. And so they have that on their portfolio. That's an investment that people can see. What people don't realize is that private equity firms want like 10 to 12% back return on investment at least. So it's like I'm trying to think of a show where you give away part of your equity.
Shark Tank, yeah.
So you're buying some of the equity of whatever Florida State is in the future, but they are heavily interested and heavily invested in that.
Yeah, Dennis, thank you so much. I hope you enjoyed Dick Howser Stadium, which was one of my favorite places to be in the late 90s and early 2000s. And it's a fun place to watch a ball game and enjoy. You're at a convention all week, right?
I'm at NACDA, the National Athletic Directors Convention in Las Vegas, and so you can only imagine the angst going on here. There's not much partying. They're all trying to figure out how they're going to come up with $22 million a year per house,
well,
among other things.
Look, they're in Vegas. Just go bet it all on Black 22.
Right. There you go.
All right.
Thanks. Which is what you're going to do anyway. Yeah.
Yeah. Thanks, Dennis. Appreciate it.
Bye, guys.
With so many companies